2018 Rams, are they the 1994 49ers or the 2011 Eagles? And we're going to take a trip back in time to the once and for all fight. Cole Sports presents On the Daily. Thank you for inviting me to your smartphones, your smart TVs, your computers, and other apparatuses that you can view me. Cole Johnson here, Cole Sports, presenting On the Daily, and we're going to get right down to it. Topic of the day, please. Before we get into the topic that I want to discuss with you, shout out to James Harden for winning the MVP, Ben Simmons for winning Rookie of the Year, Rudy Gobert for winning Defensive Player of the Year in last night's NBA awards. I will talk about that at another time. But for today, I want to break down why I think people are rushing a little bit to judgment in comparing the 2000 Rams to in comparing the 2018 Rams to the 2011 Eagles. Now, for those who don't know the makeup of the 2011 Eagles, you're dealing with a team that was coming off of Michael Vick growing into actually playing NFL caliber quarterbacking. But he was now about to be 32. You had an oncoming Vince Young who he had some issues with Tennessee and off the field, but he showed promise in his NFL career of playing. And you had other free agents like Nnamdi Asomugha who came on to the Eagles. So you had all of these factors coming into play and more that made everybody say, oh my gosh, this team is going to go all the way to the Super Bowl. And then it was punctuated by aforementioned Vince Young by saying in training camp, quote, "We have a dream team," close quote. Now, of course, the team dismally went through the 2011 season, didn't make the playoffs, and was considered a massive disappointment. Shout out to my brother, Brian Snow of Snowman in the Morning. I saw him predict, I think this was last week, that the Rams, he said this will be a hot take, the Rams will finish last in the NFC West. And I was like, whoa. And I at first had to think, well, why would he say that? And now I get it. He's thinking this is probably another version of the 2011 Eagles. And I can see that. Aqib Talib, Ndamukong Suh, you have two players there who are volatile in personality. And you have other volatile personalities already on the team too. So I get that. But in Sean McVay, the head coach of the team, I see a team buying in to his system. Whereas with the 2011 Eagles, the team was starting to tune out Andy Reid. They were starting to say, "Oh, we're not feeling you, man." You had that energy. You don't have that energy with the 2017 Rams for sure. I don't think you have that energy with the 2018 Rams either. When a team is settled at quarterback and at running back, chances are you won't have slides like you had with the 2011 Eagles. You will have seasons similar, I would think, to the 1994 San Francisco 49ers, who they were settled at quarterback with Steve Young. They were settled at running back with Waters. I can't even think of his first name. And you also had a running back in Floyd. I should say a fullback in Floyd. So you had a running back system settled. You had a quarterback system settled. And of course you had wide receivers. Jerry Rice, of course, being the one. Defense was where they had the issue. And so they added amongst them Deion Sanders and Ken Norton. What I think that taught the rest of the league was that you can get that key free agent in one or two different spots. If you have the team already constituted, you can make a run for a championship that year, but you have to have the rest of the team in place in order to do it, in order to execute making those moves in March and April to put yourselves in that prime position now 10 months afterwards. And I believe that is what the Rams think they are now. They think they have the key components and pieces in certain spots. They just need the 2, maybe 3 free agents that could take them over the top and beat the teams like the Vikings, like the Saints, like the Eagles. Teams that they feel as though are going to be the ones who are competing for not just divisional supremacy, but for conference supremacy. So I see the team being more like the 1994 49ers. Now, do I see them winning the Super Bowl? Maybe not. Because I do think the team needs to mature just a tad bit more. After all, they just won the NFC West last year. And in the wild card round, they had a less than impressive showing against another team that I think they'll have to combat and beat, the Falcons. But I don't see them being the total bust like I think some people see them. I think they're going to surprise some people and do major damage. And that is the topic of the day. When I come back, we're going to take a trip back in time. That was then is next. Coming up at tomorrow's On the Daily, we're going to break down and disseminate the 2018 NBA Awards. Now, there's some things that I'm not really feeling about that award show, and I'll talk about that on that episode. Also, in Upon Further Review, we're going to break down why I believe there are 5 reasons why soccer just doesn't work in America, and one way it can and will. That's on tomorrow's show. But for today, I'm feeling a little nostalgic, as I do every Tuesday. And shout out to VIP Jason Casalaspro, because he brought it to my attention when I said that the fight of the century was the last time 2 heavyweights walked into the ring undefeated. And I had to smile when he mentioned this fight, because I said, oh my gosh. Not only do I remember this fight, but the anniversary of it is coming up. So let me introduce to you guys to the fight dubbed Once and For All. Let's hop back to the time machine and go into That Was Then. June 27th, 1988. Now, I was a teenager at the time, and you've got to understand how I was reared. Part of my rearing was being at the feet and side of my father, talking about all of these fights: Fight of the Century, Thrill in Manila, Rumble in the Jungle, Ali Holmes. You name all the big time fights that even in the 60s, Johansson, Patterson. I would hear all of these types of fights taught to me from a boxing enthusiast like my father. He also boxed too in the Navy. So he made me love boxing in a way that I never thought I would. And when I look back at it, I understand why I love it so much and why I have issues with it now. But I was in full love affair mode with boxing then. So my father was sitting on the couch, I was sitting in a chair. I was eagerly anticipating this fight because all spring long, when I was going to school, all I kept thinking about was this fight between Iron Mike Tyson and Michael Spinks. This was supposed to be the fight that would settle who was the heavyweight of the 1980s, because you had in Spinks a guy who he didn't really run roughshod through the division, but he just showed with skill and with a little power that you can make your way through the division. In fact, his biggest W came at the hands of Larry Holmes during his heyday, because Larry Holmes ruled the heavyweight division in the early 80s. Now, the Larry Holmes who met up with Mike Tyson was a little bit past his prime. But man, did we see this guy who went into the ring, black trunks, no socks, black shoes, with a towel that had a hole cut in the middle of it so he can just slip it over his head. This guy was just straight fury, channeled and controlled. Here we are, latter part of June, late 80s, and I'll remind you, this took place at the current president's Trump Plaza, where we didn't think of him as being the president. We thought of him as a real estate mogul that just was trying to buy up everything that New York grew up. And everything in Atlantic City was starting to sprout up. So you had that element. And you had the element of romanticizing boxing, which we don't really have as much now. Because you had celebrities backing whomever was going to come out of this fight the victor. Now, celebrities didn't really know Spinks as much. Boxing purists knew him a lot better. And mind you, people didn't know Michael as well as they knew Leon, because a decade prior he won a decision over, of course, the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali, and had the heavyweight championship for a time. No, Mike just workmanlike worked his way through, similar to how Evander Holyfield went through the heavyweight division in the 90s. That's how Spinks went through it in the 80s. Tyson came in like a tornado and just F5'd everybody. Everybody in his wake was left laying literally on the canvas. So you have this boxer versus puncher, and people shortchanged Tyson so hard. He was more than just vicious right hooks and uppercuts. His left hooks and uppercuts were impressive too, and his lateral movement, to me, in my opinion, was what made him so lethal. Because he can put himself quickly into position to knock you out. Forget the punch itself. The angles he took were more impressive to me than the shots he threw. So here I am, I'm thinking, okay, 12 rounds of good boxing. I've been waiting for this all spring long. Here we are. This is how the summer's going to begin. Yes. Here we go. And the fight lasted 91 seconds. The boxer got knocked out almost like Bernard Hopkins did back in 2017. He didn't slide through the ring, thank the Lord, but he came close to doing so, getting knocked on his back. And yeah, I mean, you could say, well, 91 seconds, that was not impressive. It was impressive from this standpoint. People were thinking this is going to be the biggest test of Tyson's career, and I think this was the biggest bout he ever had. And it was the biggest test of his career to the standpoint of This is a guy that people are starting to say can beat you. We didn't really hear that before, but we are hearing that a lot in this fight. And Tyson took care of that with a quickness. Neither fighter would be the same. Spinks definitely wasn't. And even to this moment, 30 years later, we don't even talk about Michael Spinks as being anything in the heavyweight realm. We don't even mention his name. We don't. Meanwhile, we do mention Tyson because at 22, he was on that cusp of being the greatest of all time. He was going to eclipse Ali, and the talk was there. And for the next 20 months, it definitely was there. But chinks in the armor came right after this fight. The management team he was under during this fight was booted. In came Don King, and the downfall of Mike Tyson began. We didn't know it at the time, but it began. We saw it in his presentation. We saw it in his bouts. He wasn't as crisp with his punches. He wasn't as lateral. He wasn't as fleet of foot with his lateral movement. He basically wanted to knock people out and just relied on the punching power that he always had. Of course, he had a tumultuous marriage and divorce to Robin Givens, and then in February 1990 in the Tokyo Dome, he gets knocked out by German boxer Buster Douglas. But I don't even think that shook him as much as what did 3 years after the fight I'm talking about. So 3 years after Once and For All, Mike Tyson went to an event in Indianapolis, and he met up with a contestant. Her name was Desiree Washington, and the events from that night, which happened around this time in 1991, made a downward spiral go faster for one Mr. Tyson, and his life has not been the same since. And it's a shame. It's a shame that you see things like that happen, but he gave my father and me a memory that I think we both will never forget. 91 seconds of fury. How can you dispute that? Tyson was the heavyweight of the 1980s. Apologies to Larry Holmes. And man, he gave us some great thrills. This was the exclamation point to them all. If you happen to like this episode or any episode you have seen thus far, you know what to do. Subscribe to Cole Sports Presents on the Daily. Every Monday through Saturday, one episode. Each day, that is what you'll get, because that's what I want to give you. And speaking of what I want to give you, how about I give you Instagram question of the day? At Cole Sports with a Z, you get that question presented before you. And I want to know, what do you think? Let me know. Hit me up on Twitter. Hit me up on Facebook. Hit me up on Instagram. Hit me up on YouTube. I'm easy. I'm accessible. I'm here for you. Awesome. But I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for you. Thank you for the subscriptions. Thank you for the follows. Thank you for the retweets. Thank you for the love. And I will continue to give you the love as long as you have it. And that's all the time I have. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for giving me the platform to present sports intelligently, because I represent the intelligent sportsmen and women all around the world. This is Cole Johnson, and this is yet another episode of Cole Sports on the visual and on the daily.